Hello and welcome back to the ANZPAC monthly Parental Alienation conferences coming to you from a different city across New Zealand and Australia each month. Today we're here in Auckland and my name is Pete Nichols and I'm the Chief Exec of Parents Beyond Breakup. I'm here with Jim Smith today. So perhaps we might start, Jim, by you giving an introduction to yourself and the organisation that you run here in New Zealand.
Oh, thank you, Pete. And it's been really interesting being here, and it's been really interesting comparing notes because both organisations have walked a very similar journey.
Yeah. Almost the same time as well.
Almost the same time. This month we actually celebrate 25 years of offering peer support to dads in New Zealand. So my role with Kids Needs Dads is the DadzKare worker. So I work almost exclusively with the fathers. Having said that, grandparents, mothers come along, we do not turn them away. The service runs two main services. We've got the DadzKare service and then we've got the Kids Care service, which is the supervised contact service. We tend to keep a delineation between them and that seems to work quite well. We're now getting in more into the education space. This year we've started a Stepping Stones program, which is an online program, to help the dads through separation and get them at that early stage before they make mistakes.
And geographically, you're across all of New Zealand?
Correct. So we started in Tauranga 25 years ago under a different entity. We now operate from Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch as well.
Wow, cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, very much like us, I guess, you're literally equivalent organisations. And actually, just like us, we started out as dads in distress.
Yes.
And we had mums and grandparents come along and eventually we separated those services out so that we focus now. But it's a very interesting journey, actually.
Yeah.
And intriguingly, being a POM myself and having come over, I was actually intrigued that there's nothing quite like this anywhere else in the developed world, yet two countries right next door to each other have done something very similar about the same time.
Yeah.
What are the chances of that?
I know.
It's really kind of interesting. We should work more closely.
Absolutely. But my journey through it is I've got two kids, two different mums, and two tours of the family court as self-representing.
Same.
And
Same.
and despite all the horror stories you hear, both times went actually quite well.
Yeah.
And I largely put that down to the conduct of particularly for dads going through the family court.
100%.
It seems to pay dividends if you can keep your conduct in check.
100%. I mean, look, I think our experience certainly, we look after about 10,000 parents across Australia every year, and I would say that the majority of them come in quite distressed, hence the name, dads in distress, mums in distress, grandparents in distress. They can be quite traumatised, but if you can actually get them to calm down, be introspective, look at what they need to do, the system can work. It's still not great. It's not easy to navigate, but it's very interesting that you guys do almost exactly the same thing, which is help parents navigate the night. Well, what do we? Some people call it the custodial minefield. It's like, put one foot wrong and you don't want to do that.
Yeah, but on top of that, my journey through with Kids Needs Dads was I actually came out of the print industry, which went into decline. I found myself suddenly single. Sure. And I kind of threw my toys out of my cot and signed up for law school, which is probably the best decision I've ever made. I was admitted to the bar about 2 years ago. And I decided to continue with this work because I just felt that I had more bandwidth to work in.
So you're a barrister now?
Yeah.
As well, on top of everything else.
Yeah.
And I think you have an interesting theory because you have a fascination in anthropology as well about hairless apes.
Yeah, that was quite accidental because part of doing your law degree you have to do non-law papers. Yeah. And I said, well, let's do anthropology, tick the box. And it sent me down quite a rabbit hole. It was fascinating because from anthropology I ended up getting into evolutionary psychology, and I actually apply a lot of that to my work. And I sometimes call myself the Jane Goodall of the family court because all I see is hairless chimpanzees throwing poo at each other because that's what aggrieved chimpanzees do. So my lesson there is you've got to operate at a high level.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, look, with that in mind, thank you for that introduction. With that in mind, as with all of our guests, with the exception of Jill just a moment ago, because Jill's been on before, we always put the same 4 questions to our guests. And for anyone viewing for the first time, the reason we ask these 4 questions is because we're talking to different experts from different parts of Australia and New Zealand. We have mediators, police officers, lawyers, I've already said mediators. We have all sorts of different experts that work with families that break down. And it's very interesting to get the different perspectives, and we're looking to collate all of that information possibly by this October. So coming up quite soon, we're looking to pull that all together. But we're here in Auckland today with you, Jim.
Yes.
So we want to put those 4 questions to you. Now, it's fine, you can go wherever you want to go.
Okay.
You're not expected to say anything in particular. This is free reign to say, I agree with it, I don't agree with it, and this is why. First question is, what is parental alienation to you?
I'll give you the technical answer first. It is a problematic term as far as its evidential use.
From a legal perspective.
From a legal perspective. If you use Schedule 4 of the High Court rules as a guide, which is the Code of Conduct for Expert Witnesses, you'll probably find it won't pass muster. However, with regards to its use in the general discourse, I think it's a term that most people will understand.
Yeah.
If you start talking about resist, refuse or enmeshment, you tend to start losing people. So that's kind of my take on it. I also think there are kind of overt parental alienation and covert parental alienation. So the overt one is the one we normally hear about. The covert is probably more when you've got 2 parents jockeying for position. One wants to see themselves as the primary parent and somehow relegating the other parent to a secondary parent. And there's numerous examples on that.
Okay, thank you for that. Next question is, what is your position on parental alienation and why? So you've given us an insight into what you think it is.
Yeah.
What's your position on the phenomena, and what do you base that on?
Again, this is when we go back to the evolutionary psychology side of things. We tend to make a lot of decisions with our hind or our monkey brain, and then we try to justify them with our conscious forebrain, and that's kind of when you see those dynamics come through. We sort of end up in situations whereby, say for instance, guardianship. In New Zealand there is a provision to be able to appoint an additional guardian, an eligible spouse, for instance. The flip side of that is the way the legislation is written is who is eligible is under Section 23 of the Care of Children Act, or COCA as we call it here, but who has authority is in Section 21. So the legislation's a little bit sloppy. I mean, I do like the Care of Children Act, it's a really good piece of legislation, but I think they could tidy that up a bit, because on the other side is, yes, an eligible spouse can be made an additional guardian.
Sure.
But the appointment must be made by both existing guardians.
Okay.
So there can be a little, I've seen that come up a few times.
Okay.
So that's a classic example.
Cool. All right. And naturally, given your expertise, you look at it from a legal perspective, which is interesting, because we get very different answers on that one. So I'm glad that we asked you.
Yeah. And on that too, you sort of see that dynamic come across when a step parent may be introduced. And that's quite often when people want to change the rules. It's a dynamic I call a race and replace. So a new partner might come along and they go, oh, we're going to make that person the new daddy or the new mummy, and try to push the other parent aside. I see a bit of that as well.
We see quite a bit of that as well.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. 2 different countries, same phenomena, does tend to suggest there's something underlying about human nature.
Yeah, and so in those situations, I think it's really important that everyone knows to stay in their lane.
Yeah.
I sort of say the real parents are the sheriffs, the step parents are the deputies. That's how the hierarchy should work.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, our next question is, in your opinion, what do you think needs to change and why?
The legislation and the workings, well, the writing of the legislation is actually quite good. That's not where the problem lies. I think the problem lies with the delays.
Right.
When you're in a situation where you've got a child in the middle and they may be being enmeshed or in that resist review cycle, the longer it goes, the more entrenched they become. So if there's any sort of policy that needs to be changed or anything that needs to be addressed, I think it's those delays. Here in New Zealand, we have what they call Section 133 reports. and they're quite good. I've seen a lot of cases turn on those reports because it's a situation for a specialist to look under the hood and see what's going on. However, getting a psych report or a Section 133 report, the delays can be onerous. So yeah, that's probably my main criticism.
Speeding up the process. And
speeding up the process.
Well, actually, look, it's interesting. Again, being a POM by background, there's a couple of things I'm aware of from the UK which would back that up. Actually, there was I think it was secret would be too strong a word, but a confidential trial of a different approach, which was referred to as early interventions in the early 2000s. And it wasn't made very public, but it was a senior family court judge sitting down with a new case that had just come in for the first time.
Yeah.
And by reading Mum and Dad, the Riot Act, they discovered that something, from memory, I'm going to get it wrong, but it was something like 85% of cases ended there and then, before they became entrenched. The longer these cases go on, the more entrenched and the more difficult it gets. And I think other guests have actually made reference to that as well, that entrenchment is a problem.
It is a problem, and I mean, on those specialist reports, the other issue that we are dealing with in New Zealand that probably needs to be addressed is who has access to those reports.
Yeah.
Section 134 does state that, you know, if you're self-represented, you should be able to get those reports. However, the reality is it is difficult.
Yeah.
So that's something that probably needs to be addressed.
Well, actually, kind of on that, you've made me think of something else which I'm aware of, which kind of speaks to this, which, again, coming from the UK into Australia, one of the most interesting observations I made was that if you break it down, the Australian population is roughly a third of the UK.
Yes.
Third the number of divorces, third the number of cases in court, third the number of judges. And what you discovered was that if you looked at the UK about 5 years on back, sorry, no, we need to go back further. We probably need to go back 10 years and back. The average case took 3 to 3.5 years, and the average case in Australia takes 3 to 3.5 years. And suddenly the UK got it down to 6 months without any legislative change. All they did was get judges to actually adhere to the rules of the court very strictly. So if people turned up without being prepared, it's bad luck. You knew that it was your day in court. We're going to go ahead with it because there's a child at question here. We're not going to delay the case for another 9 months. So the UK got it down from about 3.5 years to 6 months. I think the Aussies are looking at that as well. About, you know, is one of the systemic changes required just to get the courts to strictly adhere to the legislation that exists and not allow continual delays and frustration?
Well, we have another thing here called the 42-day rule, which never gets adhered to.
Yeah,
so,
we have similar in Australia.
The other thing that we kind of do too is, and I think there's a little bit of a difference between New Zealand and Australia, is the use of McKenzie Friends, or lay assistants as we call them.
Which I believe came out of Australia.
Well, it was
and it's very popular in the UK and New Zealand. Oh, the irony. You need to teach us how to do it back. So yeah, I mean, talk about that a little bit maybe, about what that is.
Well, that's where I cut my teeth.
Right.
And so when I was going through my own case and I was having assistance from Kidz Needs Dadz at the time, and then I sort of stayed on and helped other guys. The courts are in two minds about them.
Yeah.
Problem is when these people come along and they are pushing a political barrow.
Quite often,
That is when the courts get a little bit mindful of their usefulness. But generally speaking, if a good McKenzie friend or lay assistant comes along, they're there to assist the court as much as they are to assist their client. And if you come from that angle, the courts are quite receptive to them. Technically, you're not meant to address the court. That's the self-represented litigant's job. Having said that, because I'm an officer of the court now, and I've got to know some of the local judges, they do cut me a little bit of slack. And it's their courtroom, they get to call who can advocate and who cannot.
Sure.
Yeah.
In Australia, quite often, you won't get rights of audience, I think as it's called in Australia, and in the UK as well. But in the UK, you can ask for right of audience and a judge nearly always gives it to you.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm also interested, if you have a lot of McKenzie friends here, not that it needs to be, but I'm curious, is it regulated in any way? And the reason I ask that is because you do get the activists, and I understand why that happens, right? I've been there myself a long time ago. I've changed my opinion on that now, but I've been there. And it's not always helpful to the process when you just need to go through the factual evidence and the process, and it can work for you. It doesn't help if you're an angry bloke
Yeah,
or mum.
Exactly, and that's why some judges are a little bit nervous when a McKenzie Friend comes along. But once you build that relationship with your local court, they tend to sort of, like I say, they cut you a bit of slack.
Sure.
But you're right, it probably is something that needs a little bit more, I don't know about regulation, but there needs to be a little bit more consistency in what McKenzie Friends can deliver.
Well, I'm nervous about the thought of regulation because the idea is not to stop people doing it. But I know that in Australia, even though we don't have many McKenzie Friends, there are moves afoot to develop standardised training so that people can be trained quickly and in a consistent manner.
Correct.
So that's something we've seen happening. I've yet to see it materialise, but I know the conversations are occurring.
Yeah, and I mean, we've got legal aid for the people who cannot afford a lawyer, but there is a limit. And then you have the people who can afford a lawyer, and then you've got this big gap in between where you either self-represent or you walk away.
Sure.
So what do you do?
Just out of interest, in New Zealand, how does it work with McKenzie Friends? Are they generally free, very low cost, low fee? How does it work? Because it varies, I know, in different countries.
Well, I think basically it's one of those things from the Law Society's perspective, and I may be wrong here, but my understanding is as long as you're not charging a fee for service, they leave you alone.
Okay.
There is room to ask for disbursements, but once you start asking for a fee for service, that's when you're kind of you're not aligning with the Lawyers and Conveyancers Act. Yeah. And they get a bit grumpy. Yeah.
Okay, good to know. I mean, I think in the UK you can cover their expenses. Yeah. That's about it. Yeah. Okay, so look, we ought to get to our last question. Thank you for I was kind of going off in tangents, but it's actually interesting to learn some of this stuff. Yeah. So the last question that we always ask our guests are, what can people watching now, whether this is later on YouTube or right now live, what's your advice? What can they do if they're facing a situation that they believe is parental alienation?
Well, probably, they can't do much about the policy and they can't do much about the delays, but they can address their own frustration, and we're a big proponent of your own self-care. Yeah. So quite often a guy will come into me and I'll say, the bad news is this is going to take some time. The good news is you've got some time. So use it wisely. Work on yourself, get yourself in a good mental state, get yourself in a good physical state, join the gym, find a pastime. And for men, it's generally something that's strenuous because it's very easy to get into this mental churn. And one way of resetting yourself is to go to the gym. The guy who did this role before me, his was going for a swim, some kind of physical activity just to make able to reset yourself, because it's very easy to get worn down. Yeah. And sometimes that's actually part of the other party's strategy, just to wear you down. So you've got to be really mindful that you've got to be in a really good space. So when the time comes, you're in a good position to make some really good decisions that aren't based on emotion. Because part of the process is that grief cycle. So if you're in a position where you can get past that anger stage in your grief cycle, then you're in a place where you can make some very considered decisions. Sure. And sort of pave the way forward with a clear head.
Gee, I really like some of what you said there, and certainly, look, we have in Australia we have multiple ways and strategies that we ask mums and dads to adopt. But a very common one, and you made me think of it a moment ago with something you said, was what we refer to as the CIA model, which is control, influence, and accept. Yes. It's where you list off all of the things you need to achieve in some way, and then you put them into the categories. These are things I can control, these are things I can influence, and these are things I just have to accept. Yes. And quite often, just that exercise of putting things into the system, into that categories really helps, because you can't change the fact that you're in a family court. You have to accept that. Correct. You can influence the judge, you can influence the other parent, you can influence the experts, but what's the best way to do it? By being your best self. Yeah. Things you can control are what you do. And radical acceptance. This is a situation you're in. And it's interesting, actually. There's a lot of analogy between how we operate. Yeah. Again, no surprise there, given what we do. Okay, so look, I mean, that's kind of the four basic questions. So if you don't mind, I might go to audience questions. Go for it. We've got a few here. Okay, this is an interesting. Right, well, let's go straight to the first question from a local professional here in New Zealand. They're saying, how do we contact Kids Need Dads and connect with Jim and his team?
Probably if you go to our website, which is knd.org.nz, and then just basically contact us through us. If you want to contact me directly, then that's jim.s@knd.org.nz.
You're a brave man giving
I
it.
know. And then, so that's probably the best way to contact us. We also offer an online peer support meeting on a Thursday night. So if you go to our website, you'll see the link on our homepage.
Cool.
And that's exclusively for the dads. So that's kind of our little private space. So we're very mindful of who comes and goes.
Sure.
Yeah, and so that's probably the best way of getting hold of us.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that was a professional, so I guess they'd probably want to talk to you about your services and probably to refer people to. Ultimately, open up Google and put in Kids Needs Dads.
Correct.
Need Dads. I'm never going to get it right. It's like a tongue twister. Kids Need Dads. Okay, we have a few questions. Most of our questions are from parents in Australia now, if you don't mind, Jim. So, Jim, would you please elaborate on what the role of a McKenzie Friend is and how do self-represented parents access one? Now, given that's in Australia, the answer is, the last part of that question is, it's not easy because there's not many of them around.
No, it's something you need to work on because it was actually from an English case.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
It was an Aussie and
but it was an Australian lawyer, so
yeah.
he was obviously did have a practicing certificate to represent in the UK, so he came along to assist someone who was self-representing. So that's the basis of the case. I think it's something Australia needs to probably look at more.
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%.
So the answer is I don't know. But
in terms of how to find them,
but
in terms of what they do, what is a McKenzie? For those who've never heard of one, what's
well again, they're there to assist.
Simple version.
They're there to assist the self-represented person.
Right.
So you can actually go into the courtroom with them. You can stand beside them. You can sort of talk to them directly and whisper in their ear, take notes, etc. But you cannot actually address the court
without permission.
Without permission from the judge. So that's essentially, and then obviously you can assist them with their applications. You can assist them with their affidavits. Being mindful though that you have to tell them this is not my affidavit. This is your affidavit.
Yep.
I'll help you with the structure of it, but it's your affidavit, and you need to be happy with it before you sign it.
Sure.
So that's kind of, again, it's not, obviously we can't give legal advice, but it's more around coaching, strategy, that type of thing. And probably the big thing is just getting their expectations in check.
Yeah. Well, it's also, if you think about, well, look, I mean, for people who've never gone through this, it is very traumatizing. It's terrifying.
Yep.
It's probably the most scary thing you'll ever do is stand up in a court and speak on your own behalf, even with a McKenzie. So having a McKenzie Friend, or anyone for that matter, that can stand next to you makes a huge difference psychologically, that you're not alone. And
to be fair, the family court is relatively friendly towards them.
Yeah.
And I think this is the other thing too, that a lot of people, they don't understand that the family court is solutions based. Once you've got the safety issues out of the way, then it's like, we're moving forward. They're not that interested in historical stuff. They're very solutions based.
Yeah.
So, a family court judge is very reluctant to make a decision for the parties. They go out of the way to get the parties to make their own determinations. And that's what I like about the family court and the way it's structured.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not there to determine guilt. They're not there to issue a punishment or anything like a criminal court. It's a very different setup.
Sure. Okay. We've got quite a few more questions coming through. Let's go to a non-professional, so a parent online from Australia. Jim, can you provide us any hope for improvements or change to prevent the distress and tragedies that we keep seeing? Now, clearly this is someone in Australia and you're here in New Zealand, but I mean, just generically, do you see hope for change, generally speaking? Or perhaps what if anything is happening here in New Zealand that you might want to comment on? There might not be much, but...
No, well, it's hard to make the comparisons because I'm fairly ignorant of how things roll in Australia.
Sure.
But I think you basically have to deal with what is in your purview. and that is how you handle yourself.
Yeah.
Get your own expectations in check. Again, the conduct is really, really important. My approach to the family court is you actually got to take it like a sales role. And any person who's been in sales knows you're not there to trash the competitor's product.
Sure.
You're there to promote your own. So don't go in there thinking he, she's this, he, she's that. The way to get traction is to present yourself as a good option, as a good parent, and be able to, this is what I can offer my child.
So going back to your early point, don't fling the poo.
Don't fling the poo.
Okay. All right. Right, here we go. More questions coming through. This one from a professional. Jim, can you tell us a bit more about the mindset that you mentioned that parents need to get into to make it through self-representation in court? That's from a professional in Australia. Tell us more about the mindset.
Well, again, I almost exclusively deal with men, and sometimes this is the first time they've actually ever been given permission to be a little bit selfish. We sort of taught as men that we're meant to put our own needs and wants and desires aside for the benefit of our family and everyone else, which is fine. But now you've got this little space where you can actually go, well, it's a bit like the analogy when the plane going down and the oxygen mask drops. They say put your own mask on first, otherwise you're no good to anyone around you. That's a really good metaphor for what you should be doing. So the radical acceptance of this is the journey I'm going through, these are the timeframes involved, what do I do with the vacuum that I've got? And that seems to be where you'll get the traction, not only with what your results you'll achieve in the family court, but you'll become a more well-rounded person. In New Zealand we call it your waiorua, or your spirit.
Okay.
And so if you address it physically, mentally, and everything else just tends to fall into place.
Yeah.
The classic journey through the family court is not linear. It's kind of like you're going along quite some time, you're just treading water, and you're not seem to be making progress, but once you get a little bit of traction, boom, you're away.
Yeah. Yeah, we see the same thing.
And that's why it's really important. I've got a saying is you never take a permanent solution to a temporary problem, and taking the approach of suicide prevention, that's also a good way to go, because you do not want to be in a position where later in the process where things would have come right, you need to be there, and you need to be there in good form.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say that another key element there, if I might just share a thought with you as well, is actually sitting down with peers, people who've gone through it themselves,
Correct.
whether it's a McKenzie Friend or other dads or mums who've gone through it.
Super powerful.
Yeah, it's really critical when you're in that. I mean, when you're faced with high levels of distress and trauma, and you go into fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
And we can think of examples of people running into the bush.
Yeah.
We've seen that recently. People fighting in court, getting aggressive with the court system, or just freezing and being unable to act. It's someone who's next to you who you can trust implicitly because they've gone through it, who can actually guide you and go, no, don't do that. Maybe look at doing this instead.
Yeah.
That is a key part of adjusting your mindset when you can't think, when you're in trauma.
Yeah, and probably the big thing, if you excuse my French, but a lot of it is don't be a dick and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
And
you can say that because you've got a Kiwi accent.
but that's a lot of it. It's just getting the conduct right. I mean, I'm a big fan of stoicism. That's a concept that's got a bit of flack over the last few years because they say you shouldn't be suppressing your emotions. I don't believe it's about suppressing them. I believe it's about mastering them.
Well, I mean, I think from a psychological point of view, stoicism is sometimes looked at as emotional regulation.
Exactly.
It's like managing your emotions to get a good outcome, rather than I agree. Yeah. It's not necessarily. I mean, in suicide prevention we talk about that. Particularly with men, that we need to get them to talk.
Yeah.
That's not the same thing as suppressing your emotions. You can still talk, but suppress your emotions. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think stoicism is a man's superpower.
Sure.
It surely is. So,
It is. Yeah, I've heard the same thing.
And there's a time and a place for it.
In fact, I've got an interesting question here from a professional in Australia. I'm curious how we would answer this. So if you're struggling with it, I would too.
Okay.
But it says, Jim, can you share some lessons learned from working with so many Kiwi parents? I'm kind of wondering what the angle there is.
Okay, that's a really interesting one because, you know, the Kiwis and the Australians are very similar.
You're not supposed to admit that. There's supposed to be a bit of rivalry going.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't know how I would answer
I don't know how to answer that either.
I mean, what is it that's unique about Kiwi? I would imagine, I mean, from my own experience being in the UK extensively, living and working in the States and across mainland Europe, the problems are very similar. I mean, they're problems of human nature, going back to your original kind of anthropological kind of references.
Yeah, well,
people are people the world over.
Yeah, probably the only real difference is the Indigenous background we have.
Yeah.
Because in New Zealand I find that Māori are very good at sorting out their issues in-house.
Yeah.
When there's a family issue going on.
That's an Indigenous thing in Australia as well.
Yeah.
They tend to resolve things within the family.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, so people sort of say, well, how many Māori do you help? And I said, well, this may sound a little bit odd, but they tend to help themselves. And there's probably something that we could learn from that.
Yeah. Probably. I would agree, actually. I think there's a lot of reliance in today's culture across the Western world to rely on external expertise versus resolving things for yourself. And
and I mean, it's a very, very, what we call Pākehā here, a very white European thing to go litigate, let's go to court.
Yeah, rely on somebody else to come and resolve it for us.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a question here from a local dad. Actually, I don't know if it's a local dad, it just says non-professional from New Zealand. Unless they use the word dad in their question, I wouldn't know. But it's a parent, I guess. Can you explain what you mean by radical acceptance? How do we do that when we are under so much stress? We've kind of touched upon that a little bit, but any other thoughts? What do you mean by radical acceptance?
Well, radical, I mean, the clue's in the name. It's basically sort of saying, yeah, I'm in a really bad situation. I don't know which direction to turn.
Yeah.
But I have to accept that this is my position I'm in. These are the facts. These are the time frames. And I just need to get my head around that and sort of say, okay, that's happened. And it's also part of that grief cycle. So I guess in that cycle you call that the acceptance stage. Mm-hmm. This is the situation I'm in. How do I deal with it? So, yeah.
I guess the radical comes in because it's so difficult to do. It's not a little thing. It's a big thing.
It's not a little thing.
Yeah.
But once you kind of accept that this is my position,
and
sometimes for a guy as well, it's kind of saying, no one's come to save me. It's all up to me. Having said that, with peer support, you can certainly be guided along the way.
Yeah. No, I agree. Okay, so we have another non-professional, this time in Australia, and they're saying, now that you've become a barrister and with hindsight, what would you have done differently as a parent if you had your time again? What would you have done differently?
Well, it's probably not so much the barrister training, it's more the evolutionary psychology training and knowing how our monkey brains work, how we often make our decisions with our hindbrains. Mm-hmm. And then we try to justify them with our forebrains. So that's really interesting from that perspective. To answer the question as far as a barrister is concerned, the whole journey through law school was about self-improvement and becoming a little bit selfish, because sometimes I don't think there's no shame in taking a tactical retreat. If it's all too much for you, do step back, because there's no much point grinding yourself and driving yourself into the ground. But specifically what I learned in the law, it's a little bit difficult because I'd already picked up a lot of it before I started law school. I already had a really good handle on family law and dealing with family violence issues in this country and the people I dealt with. So yeah, specifically with regards to my law training, probably not a lot. There's a lot more involved in that.
Well, I mean, as I thought about, as I was listening to you, it occurred to me that in my own journey, I guess the thing that looking back would be just understanding the rules of the court.
Oh yeah.
Because, I mean, as a dad in distress, my perspective on it was all about emotional justice and morally doing the right thing. And that's not how the court necessarily works. It has a well-defined set of rules that I couldn't get my head around. It took me a decade to understand that. Stay calm, do the right thing, say the right thing, and it works.
Yep.
But you can't do that when you're just emotionally overwhelmed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay, so here we go. A couple of more questions. This is from a professional in Australia. How do you overcome the stereotyping of angry dads? How do we support hurting dads, not to hurt them, but dads who are hurting, without blaming or stereotyping them? So how do we overcome the stereotype of angry dads? How do we support hurting dads without blaming or stereotyping them?
Well, again, I think we've come from similar backgrounds, because the entity that Kids Needs Dads started from was, and I sort of do refer them to the Angry Daddies Club, who sort of, there was a split in the organisation. They all sort of went away and disappeared into the ether, and then the more moderate people sort of stayed on and created this charity, and away we went.
Very similar journey for us.
Very similar journey.
Yeah,
again, it's all comes back down to conduct. You have to present well.
Yep.
And so that's where the stoicism comes in. That's where you need to be mindful of your conduct. You need to be mindful of this is my hind monkey brain trying to make my decisions for me, and I need to override that.
Sure.
So it's really just being well educated on these dynamics.
Well, I think in our case we kind of, again, very varied, because we have multiple groups and different people, different perspectives. But one of the key things that we've kind of developed over our time is to try and think through the eyes of the child. What would I want to see mum or dad be doing right now? And try to make decisions on that versus what your emotions tell you to do. And that tends to automatically calm you down, and what comes out your mouth and where it's written is very different and doesn't come across necessarily as angry dad.
Yeah.
Easy to say, extraordinarily hard to do.
Yeah. Well, the other thing we talk about too is playing the long game.
Yeah.
Because if you play the long game and you project out to what the result you want to see in the future, taking a few hits up front isn't a big deal in the grand scheme of things.
Sure.
So, you know, going back to the situation with Tom Phillips, I think the mistake he made was he played a tactical game. He made a decision on the spot. It turned out to be the wrong one and didn't pan out in the long term.
Right.
And, you know, so, yeah, if he'd sort of come to us originally, we would have said that's a really bad idea. Mm-hmm. You need to basically trust the process, accept that it's going to take some time, and within a year or two you could easily have shared care.
Yeah.
But he took a tactical move, and that was his mistake.
Very common.
Yeah.
Well, I'll own up to that one. In the early days of my case, exactly the same. I went for the tactical and didn't understand that I was actually prolonging my agony rather than shortening it.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite often I guess the decision for mums and dads looking at this situation for the first time is, do I do it correctly and get it done within a year, or do I do it the wrong way and end up doing this for the next 10 years?
Exactly.
And it's painful. It's painful either way, but one decision is slightly less painful than the other. So yeah. Well, we get some interesting questions here. Again, this is a bit of a tough one, but let's see. So this is from a professional in Australia, and they are saying, is supporting alienated and separated dads the same as supporting alienated and separated mums? Or are there clear differences on how you might support each? Now, I know that you focus primarily on dads. We do both mums and dads, so I'm happy to contribute. But the question is to you. I mean, do you have a perspective on that?
No, I would suggest they're much of a muchness.
Okay.
Yeah. My limited experience, I mean, obviously my work is mainly with fathers, and that's where most of my experience lies, but I wouldn't suggest that there is any fundamental difference.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, look, I mean, it's difficult to know in our case, is because we do look after mums and dads, it's difficult to know the actual proportion of parents who need this kind of support, because some people are resilient, male or female, and may or may not need support, and there's a difference in who tends to get custody of the child primarily. But what we see is about 10% of our clients would be mums who are alienated. And what's really interesting about that is that it's a smaller number, but it's more of an acute problem, because there's almost a societal acceptance that I'm a dad who's being stopped from seeing my kids. Kind of everyone knows it goes on, all right? Whether you agree with it or not, people know that it goes on. When you're a mum who's been stopped from seeing the kids, people go, why? What's wrong with you? And so mums sometimes actually have it harder, but there might be a smaller number of them. And so
that's a good perspective.
We sometimes look at so we need to go through a process with mums of getting them to emotionally regulate more before we can actually work with them, because they are so distressed. It is so distressing for them that they've been taken out of the role as a parent against their will. So we do a lot of work up front with emotional regulation. Then we go to the practical solving of problems. Men tend to go, right, just to show me how to fix this. I just want to know the practical stuff.
Yeah.
So that tends to be the key difference in our experience anyway. Okay, so let's have a little look. We've got a non-professional from New Zealand. What help does kids need dads and dads in distress need in New Zealand? What help do we need? Sounds like much needed support, and I want to know what I can do to help out. So that's presumably a parent here in New Zealand wanting to help both of us do something in New Zealand.
Well, the core of our service is peer support. So
Yeah.
anyone who wants to come along and offer peer supports, particularly if they've been there, done that, I do caution some of my clients, because I do say you need to be fighting your own battles at this stage, not other people's.
Yep.
So be mindful that if you do step forward and do want to offer peer support, it's not at the detriment of your own situation. So that's one thing I will say. Funding is always the challenge. I think men's groups or anything that's targeted towards men tends to get breadcrumbed.
Yep.
And thankfully it's changing. It's changing a lot, because 20 years ago when I started this work, I kind of call it the Titanic model, because the lifeboats were for the women and the children and the men were left to flounder. That's changing, thankfully.
Yeah.
But there's still more to go. So as far as funding goes, if anyone wants to sort of make a philanthropic, I always have trouble with this one, wants to make a donation, we'll obviously take it, but it's probably the real support is in people's time.
Yeah.
And being able to step up and buddy up maybe with someone who's going through the wars.
Well, certainly in the last decade, because of the struggle to get sufficient funding to do the kind of support that we do, predominantly for men, but we have fear no favour. We have mums, dads, grandparents, anyone that needs it actually. But we've learned the importance of voluntary support. So we're very, very high proportion volunteers.
Yep.
And so anyone that's prepared to put their hand up and say, look, I'm prepared to do a few hours, whether it's raising awareness so that people know that this organisation exists, whether it's running a group, whether it's mentoring one-to-one. I mean, that's our model in Australia. We operate a helpline as well, so we have volunteers on the helpline. Every single person, I mean, in our case, we're a suicide prevention support service focusing on parents because they're at such high risk. So every hour you put into it potentially saves another human's life. So
absolutely.
It's not to be underestimated. Just putting your time and effort into it makes a big difference. I'm just conscious of time, Jim.
Yes.
So I think we're probably going to have to draw a line. There's still questions coming in. And as with Jill earlier, we'll be inviting Jim back to something much bigger that's coming down the line. So with that, thank you, Jim. If you just wouldn't mind just staying there for a second, I'm just going to close off today's conference. So thank you for everyone watching in person and online from whichever country you're watching us from today. I have 3 quick announcements to make. The first is contemporary. It's today here in Auckland. And that is that Jim and I will be running our first Dads in Distress style peer support meeting here in Auckland tonight. So if you're a dad watching this, or you know a dad who's separated and needs this, make sure that they jump onto the Dads in Distress Facebook page, and we've put an event up there. So that's going ahead at 7 o'clock tonight in Auckland. The details are all there. It's completely free, it's confidential, it's non-judgmental, and it's dad friendly. So if it goes well tonight, then it's up to Jim whether he'd like to do more of them. But do come along if you're a separated dad in Auckland, and we'll show you how we do it, at least. Second thing is, we're fast approaching Parental Alienation Awareness Day. In Australia and New Zealand, it is the 12th of October, not the 25th of April, the rest of the world, because of our Anzac Day here on the 25th of April. So just be aware that Parents Beyond Breakup will be running an online conference this year. So we'll be announcing that very shortly, and that'll be something that's free, that anyone anywhere in the world, but certainly in Australia and New Zealand, can jump onto and watch. And we'll be having a whole range of interesting workshops and experts on that. Lastly, and most importantly, pretty excited to announce this, There is an organization in the States called the Parental Alienation Study Group. They are the world's largest network of professionals, academics working specifically in parental alienation. And each year they have an annual international conference. The 7th one is just closing in Toronto in Canada. And we will be announcing formally in the next 24 hours that Parents Beyond Breakup has been announced as the next official partner. So we'll be running the 8th conference in Perth in Western Australia next year on and around Parental Alienation Day. So we are bringing pretty much all the world's experts to Australia. We would love our friends from New Zealand to come and join us, both professionals, parents. For those that can't physically get there for whatever reason, we'll be providing all of that online at a much, much reduced cost as well. And again, we're going to be doing some really interesting workshops that we don't think has ever been done before. Part of that will include developing policy frameworks for both the Australian and New Zealand governments to advise them on how they might go about addressing some of these issues. So we're really going into the practical, let's make a difference here. The best bit about that is that we're going to be getting the world's top experts working together with local parents here in Australia and New Zealand. So if you come along, you get to shape the policy in our two countries around how this matter gets dealt with. I don't think that's happened ever before anywhere in the world. So awesome opportunity. You've got a year to plan to join us. So with that, I think that's a close for today. Thank you so much to Jim and to our earlier guest, Jill Goldson. It's been awesome coming here to New Zealand. I've discovered that my name is not Pete Nichols, it's Pit Knuckles. And that is now my name on Facebook from this point on, which makes me sound like I'm a cage fighter, Pit Knuckles. But anyway, that's been wonderful. Thank you so much for all our online viewers as well. We'll catch you soon.